You know that old saying that democracy depends on the consent of the losers? If that's true, what happens to democracy when the losers won't concede? That's kind of where we find ourselves this week. The loser of the last presidential election has still not conceded 6 months after Election Day. Maybe he never will. But on Wednesday, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy insisted that Republicans are not questioning last fall's election.
I don't think anybody is questioning the legitimacy of the presidential election. I think that is all over with.
Apparently not. Just this afternoon, the former president released yet another statement questioning the legitimacy of the presidential election. He says it will go down as the crime of the century. An exclamation point. This is the former president the new GOP leadership chose to close ranks around. This week, they began a very public purge of people who criticized Donald Trump for refusing to accept the election outcome. On Wednesday, Congresswoman Liz Cheney was removed from her leadership position as GOP conference chair. Immediately after that voice vote, she had this to say.
We cannot both embrace the big lie and embrace the Constitution.
And later this week, she expanded on that point with NBC's Savannah Gunn.
You've watched over the course of the last several months the former president get more aggressive, more vocal, pushing the lie. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. This isn't about looking backwards. This is about the real-time current potential damage that he's doing, that he continues to do.
Some of your colleagues say, though, we supported you before, Congresswoman Cheney. You made your point. Now drop it. Let's focus on the future.
Well, it's an ongoing threat. So silence is not an option.
Note those last few words, an ongoing threat. This week, House members reached a deal on a bipartisan commission to investigate the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. Now, the commission will not consist of any current lawmakers who were present on that day. That includes lawmakers like Republican Congressman Andrew Clyde. Here's how he described January 6th this week.
No insurrection, and to call it an insurrection, in my opinion, is a bold-faced lie. Watching the TV footage of those who entered the Capitol and walked through Statuary Hall showed people in an orderly fashion staying between the stanchions and ropes taking videos and pictures. You know, if you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
For the record, it was not a normal tourist visit. They were not in an orderly fashion. And yes, it was indeed an insurrection. Just for the record. Congresswoman Cheney is not the only Republican voicing frustrations with the party. Another Trump critic, Illinois Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, made this observation on Thursday.
This party's really sick, and this party needs some real help. And if we're not going to stand up and be willing to put it all on the line for that, this party's not going to be around in the future.
So then what is the future of the Republican Party? How does the country move forward when one major party refuses to accept electoral outcomes at the highest level? Tonight, we'll look at a few different approaches, including what legislative options are available to counter voting restriction bills that are currently being pursued by state GOP legislatures. We'll also look at President Biden's approach. He is choosing to focus on finding common ground rather than focusing on differences. But we begin with the movement that was launched this week by 100 anti-Trump Republicans. They're aiming to create space within the GOP for conservatives who do accept the results of the last election. Joining us now is one of the organizers of that movement. Miles Taylor is the co-founder and advisor of REPAIR, the Republican Political Alliance for Integrity and Reform. He was chief of staff of the Department of Homeland Security during the Trump administration. Mr. Taylor, good evening. Welcome.
Joshua, thanks for having me.
What do you think is most vital to save in the Republican Party?
Look, this is a values debate, right? This is about character. So Teddy Roosevelt, a prominent former Republican a century ago rather, said that character in the long run is the decisive factor in the life of individuals and nations alike. Now, look, we've just lived through 4 years of a man without character. But the question now for our party and our country is, what is the content of our character? And right now, when we look at the current GOP, I think we're deeply disappointed when we assess the content of its character, which is a reliance on misinformation, untruths, fake news, right? It's a character that's been corrupted. What we are trying to do with this new movement is hit reset. And if we can, take the GOP back to its founding ideals, back to founding principles, back to a respect for the rule of law, the Constitution, and decency. And if we can't do that, Joshua, we're going to move on and we're going to start something new. It may be a new movement or it may be a new party.
What's your plan to do that? Give me some of the tactics and the techniques that are at your disposal to try to win back the GOP.
Well, look, first and foremost, and also, Joshua, I thank you for your patience. I'm currently taking care of a sick puppy here at home who insists on sitting on my lap.
Oh, my goodness.
So if I get distracted, this little guy, the only thing that's making him feel better right now
you
is
ought to be
on
ashamed of yourself. You knew I had tough questions for you, and you brought a puppy. I can't believe.
I was like,
if this is the Republican Party that we're saving, then to hell with them. I can't believe you would stoop so low as to play partisan puppy politics. I can't believe
it's a bait and switch. You're gonna talk to me about my service in the Trump administration. I'm gonna say, meet Martini.
No,
he's the Chewbacca.
No, not tonight. Forget it. Forget it. No,
but listen, my friend.
Yeah.
Here's where we come down on it. Is at the end of the day, my hope is that we reboot and reform the Republican Party. I'm not going to hold my breath. All right. The Republican Party that I've been a part of for my lifetime has become a cult of personality instead of a cohort that's devoted to principles. And I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to fight these guys until the last breath of my body. But we've got to revert to a period where the Republican Party had some sense of decorum and character. And it has slipped into a carnival. And so that's what we're trying to do. It's going to be hard. We're not saying out of the gate we're going to form a third party, Joshua. That's the Mount Everest of political objectives and a very hard one to climb. But in the immediate, we want to give moderate, rational Republicans a new brand to differentiate themselves from the radicals, the rationals versus the radicals. So what we're going to be pushing is the idea of renewers, renew Republicans who are part of the I'm Not Crazy coalition in American politics. That's what we're going to try to do. We'll see.
Here's what I'm struggling with the idea of trying to reform the party from within.
Yeah.
It almost feels like trying to save an abusive relationship. And I say this as somebody who was in an abusive relationship, not physically, but emotionally, very abusive near the end. And it took me about 6 months before. Yeah. And it took me about 6 months before I pulled out of the relationship and was like, you know what? At a certain point, this is on me to pull myself out because I have the capacity to. And it was hard to kind of restructure, but I'm glad I did it. If the party keeps acting against your values, against American democracy as you see it, it kind of feels like you're trying to rehabilitate a relationship with someone who knows they're hurting you and won't stop. Why would you save that? Why aren't you better off just moving on?
Joshua, it's going to be harder to give that answer while I look like Dr. Evil here petting the animal
That's
in my lap.
All right. But you understand what I'm getting at, though.
But I would say, no, I fully understand. In fact, I'm actually really grateful that you went there. I've been in deeply abusive relationships in the past. We know what that's like. And it's an important analogy to make because that's what's happened with the Republican Party. And I've got to say, I have the deepest, most immense personal disappointment in watching people that I looked up to when I worked in the House of Representatives and then in the Trump administration, who said that Donald Trump was a threat to the fabric of our republic, then abdicate their responsibility by staying completely silent. So we have a Republican Party that's so battered, it's scared, it's terrified to tell the truth about this man. But even to this day, I meet with these members of Congress. I meet with these senators. I live on Capitol Hill. They're my friends. And they're people who still say these same things, and they won't say them in public because they've been so battered by Donald Trump. But what we need to do is give them air cover. Just like in a bad relationship, you need people who are willing to stand by you, help you get past the abuser and move on. And that's actually what we're trying to do. And I haven't said it that way to anyone, Josh, but you tapped into it, Joshua, which is that we've got to show people you are not alone. You are not alone, and you've got a cohort of people that are with you that stand against the craziness. And it's not just tens or tens of thousands. There are millions of Americans who feel this way, and we want them to know they are not alone. There is going to be a coalition of the I'm Not Crazy to back them up and be a part of a common sense coalition to reform not just the Republican Party, but to try to fix our country and to work with the other side of the aisle.
Miles Taylor of Repair, I appreciate you making time for us, especially when you are puppy sitting. But thanks very much. We appreciate talking to you. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.